And one more image for you tonight. Tomorrow, many of you will find on your newsstand a very rare special edition of Time magazine. That is the cover shot. There are, at least as when I saw it on my computer, now I'm not so sure, there are no words, there's no strong slug on it, just the date. It is not since August of '98, during the Lewinsky matter, has Time published a special edition. They'll publish again on Monday, as they always do, but they put that out, and that picture, I guess, is the one that I will confess I took to sleep with me last night.
I think we all did.
Yeah.
I think it's forever burned into our consciousness here. Aaron Brown and I both thank you for joining us tonight. That wraps it up for us this evening. Garrick Utley, Colleen McEdwards, and Jim Clancy will take you through the next hour. We, again, appreciate your joining us tonight. Good night.
Yeah.
A day after the stunning attacks on America, a sense of determination as New York City confronts the horror of Tuesday's terrorist attacks.
While investigators follow a trail of clues along the United States East Coast, searching for those responsible for the devastation.
And around the world, outpourings of grief for the victims and expressions of solidarity with the United States. Hello and welcome. I'm Jim Clancy.
And I'm Colleen McEdwards at the CNN Center. We want to bring you right up to date on the latest developments, of course, for you right here. Authorities in New York Wednesday evening evacuated two of the city's landmarks. They told people to leave both the Empire State Building and Penn Station. It's not clear yet why New York authorities took this action, but the all clear, we can tell you, was given just about 30 minutes ago. We'll continue to monitor that. Meanwhile, with their hands, with pickaxes, with whatever they can grab, rescuers dig slowly through the mounds of rubble, searching for survivors and human remains. At times, they're forced to retreat when sections of surrounding buildings buckle and crack. That actually happened Wednesday when what's left of the South Tower of the World Trade Center completely collapsed, as did 5 World Trade Center. Despite their efforts, only 9 survivors have been pulled from the wreckage so far. Still, firefighters, though, work on.
It's a lot of devastation, but we have to deal with it. It's something that we have to do. I mean, nobody really prepares for anything on this kind of scale. And, every news you hear is just more and more bad news.
In New York, leaders warn that the death toll from the collapse of the Twin Towers is sure to be heavy. Many people did manage to get out, but authorities fear that thousands remain under the piles of metal, stone, and dust. New York's mayor and governor appear undaunted.
We have to all work together now, and work together to make sure that we save as many lives as possible, rescue the people that we can rescue, and rebuild the city of New York and the World Trade Center to be even greater and more wonderful and more beautiful than it was before.
We're going to show the rest of the nation, we're going to show the rest of the world that the New Yorkers are not intimidated by terrorism, that we don't surrender to this type of cowardly act, but we will come back stronger than ever.
And citywide, Mayor Giuliani says that the death toll officially standing at 82, expected, though, of course, to go much higher.
At the same time this day, U.S. President George W. Bush taking a close-up view of the devastation at the Pentagon for himself. Mr. Bush made the short trip to the sprawling building just outside Washington Wednesday. After meeting with rescue personnel, he stared silently at the huge gash left by the plane's impact.
Coming here makes me sad on the one hand. It also makes me angry. And our country will, however, not be cowed by terrorists, by people who don't share the same values we share, by people who are willing to destroy people's lives.
As Mr. Bush stood nearby, workers unfurled a large American flag and began singing, "God Bless America." Now on to one of the areas of this story people are most interested in, the investigation. No arrests yet, but in Boston, the FBI taking several people in for questioning. Boston is a focus for investigators because 2 of the 4 hijacked commercial flights originated there. Agents have also taken into custody several people in Providence, Rhode Island, as well as Venice and Vero Beach, Florida. Authorities searched 2 residents in Vero Beach, where they say 2 brothers possibly involved in the hijackings may have lived.
The Department of Justice has undertaken perhaps the most massive and intensive investigation ever conducted in America. The full resources of the FBI, the Justice Department's Criminal Division, the U.S. Attorney's offices, the INS, and other components have been brought to bear and will be focused in this endeavor.
The Bush administration still considering how to respond to the terror attacks. President Bush huddled with his national security team Wednesday. Pressure building on the Bush administration to strike back and strike back soon. But top aides say the battle against terrorism will take a long-term commitment from the entire world.
We're building a strong coalition to go after these perpetrators, but more broadly, to go after terrorism wherever we find it in the world. It's a scourge not only against the United States, but against civilization, and it must be brought to an end.
U.S. military advisors are refusing to provide any details of whether a military strike is being planned, but Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld warning U.S. servicemen and women to be on the alert.
We are, in a sense, seeing the definition of a new battlefield in the world, a 21st century battlefield. And it is a different kind of conflict. It is something that is not unique to this century, to be sure, but it is, given our geography and given our circumstance, it is in a major sense new for this country.
Now, at the same time, Colleen, congressional leaders are telling CNN lawmakers and the White House have begun work on a so-called use of force resolution. But they add several key leaders are raising concerns that the measure could be seen as a blank check authorizing military action.
International support key as well here, and President Bush and his top aides also spent much of the day trying to line up international support for the U.S. response to the attacks, and they did get a good deal of it. At an emergency meeting in Brussels, NATO made a decision that could pave the way for a collective response to the carnage.
On September the 12th, the North Atlantic Council met again in response to the appalling attacks perpetrated yesterday against the United States of America. The Council agreed that if it is determined that this attack was directed from abroad against the United States, it shall be regarded as an action covered by Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which states that an armed attack against one or more of the allies in Europe or in North America shall be considered an attack against them all.
And NATO's decision marks the first time in the 52-year history of the alliance that the Mutual Defense Clause has actually been invoked. Meantime, Germany says it wants to repay the United States for its past support.
When the freedom of Berlin was at stake, John F. Kennedy said, you know the famous sentence, Ich bin ein Berliner. That was the expression of an incredible solidarity. Today, I think we have reason, especially as Germans, to return this show of solidarity. We stand in solidarity with the American people.
The U.S. financial markets are going to remain closed until at least Friday. The leaders of the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission cite the destruction in downtown Manhattan for that delay. However, the U.S. Treasury will resume trading on Thursday. Meantime, thousands of travelers are waiting for commercial air travel to actually get going again. Federal officials have announced the limited resumption of commercial flights, but they say they need more time to put strict new security measures into effect. They include a total ban on knives and an end to curbside and off-airport check-ins. Also, only ticketed passengers with photo ID will be allowed past airport metal detectors, done that way in several other countries. Aviation officials say they don't expect passenger travel to return to normal before Thursday evening Eastern time. That is at the earliest, we're told. Jim?
Now, even at this moment, a day and a half or more after that first jetliner slammed into the World Trade Center, the full story of the attack on the United States is really only beginning to take shape. We now have stories of survival. We have stories of struggle. CNN's Garrick Utley joins us once again, surveying the skyline of a wounded city. Garrick.
Indeed, Jim, it is still a wounded city. New York City, particularly Manhattan here around us, has begun to come back halfway to life this afternoon and even this evening. Mayor Giuliani and others are predicting that by tomorrow life should be as normal as it can be, except for the lower part of the island there along New York Harbor where the attack took place. And as we try to still handle and absorb the shocks of the attack itself on Tuesday, there are the aftershocks, perhaps not so surprisingly, fears of new bomb attacks. In fact, false alarms, perhaps even hoaxes. One of these occurred just right below us here along 34th Street in Midtown Manhattan this evening. A bomb alert or warning was received by security officials, and suddenly 34th Street, a busy crosstown thoroughfare, was the scene of all kinds of police and fire department action. The units were brought in, the cars and pedestrians were cleared out from almost the Hudson River to on the west to Madison Avenue on the east. That's where securing the area around the Empire State Building. And not only the Empire State Building, but also nearby Penn Station, one of the main transportation hubs in Manhattan. The alert was also valid for that center. Passengers were not only rushed out of the terminal, some passengers, we are told, were told to get out of their trains and flee. But after about 1 hour, it was indeed a false alarm, and 34th Street is being reopened to traffic once again. And perhaps it's not surprising that these kinds of hoaxes, some kinds of people with these ideas will be calling these in. Of course, the police have to respond, which makes it much more difficult for them to deal with the real trouble and tragedy further downtown. And downtown is our correspondent Michael Oku, who has a vantage point near where the World Trade Centers once stood and can tell us what's going on there, how the rescue efforts are proceeding. Michael?
Garrett, good evening. As you can see, I am standing in front of what used to be the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. If you look over my shoulder, you will see that it's now just a very, very blooming cloud of smoke. You can smell some of the remnants. People say that it's material, obviously, that came from the building and from some of the smoke down on the ground level. There are helicopters flying overhead. One must imagine that they have to do with the rescue efforts, and some of the authorities are surveying the scene here. Mayor Giuliani, as you correctly said, has said that tomorrow life will go back to normal, but he has said it is still pretty much a state of emergency south of 14th Street in Lower Manhattan. The police barricades that had stretched all across 14th Street, which basically divides Lower Manhattan from the rest of the city. He also mentioned what are some very grim numbers. When you talk about stories like this, you will always talk about the numbers, and we will be talking about the numbers for the weeks ahead. As we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Colleen mentioned 82 victims found, 18 of which have been identified. So you can do the quick arithmetic on that. That means, of course, grimly, that 64 bodies have not been identified. It's unclear whether any of those bodies or all of those bodies will ever be identified. Of course, that's speculation at this point. We will get, hopefully, clearer information on that in the days ahead. And also very difficult to digest, but unfortunately a harsh reality in a story like this. Authorities at the scene at the mayor's press conference today, after the press conference, told me that also 37 body parts were found. New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani confirmed tonight that the city has requested 6,000 body bags from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and that 3,000 tons of debris had been found from the site. Again, very grim numbers, and I'm sure that we will continue talking about those numbers in the days ahead. Garrett?
Thank you very much, Michael. As the rescue work continues, we're also receiving new images, new scenes of what was happening at the time, shortly after the explosion. And these are pictures of the downtown area, some of the rescue efforts that were taking place, some of the looks like a bulldozer there trying to move an ambulance or a police department vehicle. These are some of the efforts. It's not just the rubble up from the buildings itself, but we see again the destruction. This again an amateur video which was made today and courtesy of Mr. Bauer who took them. Again, it shows part of the mosaic, the destruction there.